The slap rang out, a sharp crack echoing through the cold marble hallway. Marcus Vail's voice was a roar, filled with fury. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" But Kerry didn't even flinch. She just smiled, a chillingly calm expression on her face. Outside, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, a soundtrack to the chaos beginning to unfold. Inside, under the glittering chandeliers of the Vail mansion, a dynasty was starting to fracture. Welcome back to Empire of Ashes. This is episode 3. Blood in the Water. The air in the Grand Vail mansion still carried the faint, acrid smell of smoke from the fire down at the waterfront. The family was gathered, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken accusations. Mrs. Vail, the matriarch, sat silently in her antique chair, her eyes missing nothing. Marcus, her son, paced back and forth like a caged animal, his anger a palpable force in the room. His daughter, Isabella, stood near the balcony, visibly shaken but trying to maintain her composure. And then there was Kerry, leaning casually against the fireplace, her blonde curls falling over one shoulder. Her eyes were sharp, calculating every move, every word. "I had nothing to do with that fire," she said, her voice laced with a sweet, almost mocking innocence. Marcus stopped his pacing, his gaze locking onto her. "Noah said you did," he growled. A faint smile played on Kerry's lips. She didn't need him to say it. She knew they were getting close, that the walls were tightening around her. But she was always one step ahead. Meanwhile, down at the docks, the family's longtime confidant, Ezekiel Brooks, stood alone, staring into the dark, murky water. He was the quiet observer, the man who held all their secrets, the one who knew too much. He saw the slow approach of Mrs. Vail from the corner of his eye. She stopped, beside him, her presence heavy with worry. "You see it too, don't you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ezekiel gave a slow, solemn nod. "This wasn't just sabotage," he said, his gaze still fixed on the water. "It was strategy." Mrs. Vail's voice dropped even lower, filled with a dawning horror. "And strategy," she said, "comes from within." They didn't need to speak the name. They were both thinking it. Kerry, later that night, safely locked inside her private suite, Kerry's soft, innocent expression vanished. The mask was off. She opened her laptop, and a video call connected instantly. On the screen was a rival shipping magnate, a man with a hungry, impatient look in his eyes. "You said the explosion would cripple them," he demanded. "It did," Kerry replied, her voice steady and calm. "But not enough." The man on the screen scowled. "Your grandfather is already rebuilding." Kerry leaned forward, her eyes glinting in the low light of the room. "That's why Phase 2 begins tomorrow." She ended the call without another word. On her desk, a stack of forged documents lay waiting. Transfer agreements, stock authorizations, the keys to a kingdom. She wasn't just trying to hurt the Vail Empire. She was methodically planning to steal it. Ezekiel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Driven by a deep-seated suspicion, he found himself in Marcus's private study, sifting through old company records. Something didn't add up. He found it. A silent transfer of a significant block of shares made 3 months ago. The signature was digital, authorized from within the mansion's own private, secure server. His blood ran cold as he read the login ID used for the authorization. C. Vail. Kerry just as the realization hit him. A soft voice sliced through the silence from the doorway. "Looking for something." Ezekiel turned slowly, his heart pounding. Kerry stood there, framed by the doorway. She was perfectly calm, unbothered, and utterly dangerous. "You're smarter than the others," Kerry said, her voice smooth as silk as she walked into the study. "That's why I need you." Ezekiel stood his ground. "I'm not yours to use," he replied, his voice firm. But Carrie was already moving, circling him like a predator studying its prey, a strategist assessing a chessboard. You think they'll ever trust you the way they trust blood? The words were a direct hit, striking at the very core of his position within the family. I can give you power, she purred, stepping closer. Position. Control. Ezekiel stared at her, his mind racing. And in return, he asked. Hugh looked the other way. Held her gaze. You set that fire. Carrie's smile was slow, deliberate, and terrifying. No, she whispered, her voice a conspiratorial breath. I set the future, too. The next day, Mrs. Vale summoned Carrie to her private sitting room. The air in the room felt colder than usual, charged with tension. You underestimate me, the grandmother said, her voice like steel. Carrie, unfazed, began to pour tea with a steady hand. No, grandmother, she replied calmly. I outgrew you. Froment. Mrs. Vale's sharp eyes widened, a flicker of something unreadable in them. You're playing with sharks, child. Carrie leaned closer across the small table, her own eyes now hard as diamonds. I am the shark. And for the first time, the powerful matriarch of the Vale family looked uncertain. The final blow came with a phone call. Marcus was on the line with the bank. His face went pale. A massive portion of Vale shipping shares had been shifted overnight. A hostile leverage play, executed with an internal authorization code. He slammed the phone down, his knuckles white. Who did this? He roared, his voice echoing through the mansion. Carrie stepped into the room from the shadows, her expression unreadable. I did! The silence that followed was like a blade, sharp and absolute. You're destroying this family. Marcus finally screamed, his face contorted with rage and betrayal. Carrie's expression hardened into something cold and unforgiving. You destroyed it years ago, she said, her voice cutting through his anger. I'm just claiming what's mine. The episode ends back at the docks. A sleek private yacht is preparing to leave the harbor. Carrie stands at the edge of the pier, the wind whipping through her hair. Her phone buzzes. A message from the rival magnate. Funds transferred. Phase 2 approved. She doesn't smile. Behind her, she hears footsteps approaching. It's Ezekiel. You don't have to do this, he pleaded, his voice earnest. Carrie didn't even turn to look at him. You still don't understand, she said softly. Finally, she turned to face him, the setting sun catching the fire in her eyes. This was never about revenge. Then what? Ezekiel asked, bewildered. Carrie's signature smile returned, wider and more triumphant than ever. It's about inheritance. The yacht's powerful engine roared to life. Zeds began to pull away from the dock, a new inferno erupted in the distance. Another Vale warehouse, engulfed in flames. Another calculated strike. Across the water, the lights in the Vale mansion seemed to flicker, as if the Empire itself was faltering. War had officially begun, and Carrie was winning. If you're hooked and need to know what happens next, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Drop a comment below, Scary the Villainier, or is she a visionary fighting for what she believes is hers? And do you and forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of Empire of Ashes. Because in this world, family isn't sacred. Power is. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in episode 4.